In this module, we are going to have a look at the API Explorer, the tool that will enable you to connect your interface experiences to the world through REST-based web services. First, let's have a look at the tool itself. The API Explorer will enable you to create automatically an interface asset to connect your experience to a REST-based web service. To create an interface asset, click on Add an Interface Asset button here. Then select API Explorer. The first time you open the tool, you will be driven through a tutorial, which you can also start from this menu. You also have direct access to a reference documentation as well as beginner's guide to APIs, to the world of web services. In the tool, you can also start directly with one of our examples or use your own query history as soon as you've used it several times. Now let's see how to import data using a simple GET HTTP request. In this example, we are going to import a list of pictures for our Van Gogh experience. We are using a third-party service, Airtable, which has a nice API, easy to use with API Explorer. Whatever tool you decide to use, you need to get access to the documentation of these web services, the one you will actually need to call to import that data. In this case, let's go to the Help Menu, API Documentation. We want to import our table to list the records that are hosted in this online database. If you didn't have a tool like the API Explorer, you will need to go through coding and using such a request. We are going to just copy this one, make sure it has all required information such as your API key. Let's do a copy. And then let's go back to the API Explorer. In the field here, you can enter this request URL. So let's do a paste, Control V on your keyboard, and hit the blue button to send the request and have it analyzed by the API Explorer. This new panel is divided on two sides. On the left is the request, the left and the top, while on the right-hand side you have your results. It can be some JSON or XML feeds written by the web services. API Explorer will present it to you in a more readable way. For example, in this case, the URL field looks like an image, so you have a preview of the data returned by the web service. All the properties available in the result will always be available in Composer for your design. Now, when you import the interface asset the first time, you have the choice to choose a subset of these fields using the blue marks like here. In this case, let's say we only want to keep this main picture and we don't care about the other fields. You can deselect all these to make sure that your default design will be the most simple possible. On the top here, you can select or unselect all the properties, see which ones has been selected. In our case, we have only one, and then collapse all the different steps in the tree of the response. When you're done and you're satisfied with your selection, just hit the Create button here, and the interface asset is going to be imported into your Composer, into your experience. You can rename the interface asset as well as rename its category. There we go. We have our data listed in a collection. Modifying the look and feel of this data will be part of another module about data templates. Now let's see how to make a more complex request and add additional parameters to our request. We have already created this first interface asset listing some items. Let's edit it. So if you do a right click here, you can do Edit in API Explorer. This will reopen the API Explorer on this particular request. On the left-hand side, you can delete some parameters. For example, in this case, the max records, we don't really want that. We are going to remove it, so we get our 12 records. If we look here in the different fields, we have some landscape property as an orientation, as well as portrait. We can add a parameter to filter our list and retrieve only the ones where the value is equal to landscape. To add a parameter, click on the Add a Parameter button. This is where the web service documentation will be helpful. A table enables you to filter using formulas, and the parameter to use here is called filter by formula. The parameter value is the actual formula. In our example, we want the field orientation to be equal to the value landscape. Not all web services will enable you to filter the data like this, so check their documentation. You can specify the type of parameter to use. In this case, it is a query parameter that will be added to the URL after the question mark using an ampersand as a separator. You can also add header parameters, often used for authorization tokens like here, or a body parameter, mainly used with post or put requests. Click the Add button to add this parameter. Now you can see instead of the 12 records, we only have 6 remaining. These will only be the ones where this field orientation equals landscape. When you're satisfied with all your parameters, click the Update button to override the existing interface set you had. And now we have only 6 records in this list. Now that we know how to import data, let's see how to export data using a POST request. We'll take the example of a guest book where you would like the viewer to leave a name, a comment, and to store this information as well as the day and time. If we look in our online database, we do have a second page with these 3 fields, name, comment, and timestamp. Again, looking at the documentation, we will see that on this different table, you can create records, and this is the corresponding request. So same ID, we select the request, right-click, copy. Back in Composer, we are not going to edit this interface set. We are going to add a new one. One will import the data while we export the data. So open API Explorer again, paste your new requests, and you can see the name, comment, and time fields are automatically added here on the left-hand side. The request looks good, the parameters looks good. You can create the interface asset. To call this post request, you will need a trigger. In this scenario, let's use the button and add an isReleased trigger on the button. On the action side, you can select among your interface assets your new guest book, and you will have your action, including the command, name, and timestamp fields. As you have learned in the previous module, you can then use a binding, for example, for the name property. To look into your scene, find the name text input and pick its text property. Do the same with the comment field on the comment text input text property. And for the timestamp, I'm actually going to use another interface asset, which is the clock, and use its ISO date property.